We are learning about the Enneagram with Peter O'Hanrahan, one of the leading Enneagram practitioners and trainers in the world. The Enneagram is one of the most powerful tools for understanding ourselves and others, and it is widely used by thousands of therapists and organisations to support personal and professional growth and build better relationship and group dynamics and more informed leadership skills. And so as part of my work, I filled out a number of different Enneagram questionnaires over the years, and I've always found the insights to be helpful. But consulting with Pete privately and diving more deeply into my personality type and core motivations and fears has empowered me in really exciting ways. So thank you to my friend Lisa Perks, who introduced me to Pete, who is a titan in the Enneagram community. Pete has been working as a therapist for almost 50 years. He started working in mental health as a counsellor in crisis intervention centres in Maryland in the 1970s before moving to Berkeley to embrace more holistic and body-based therapies. And he opened a wellness centre in the 70s, and Helen Palmer became a colleague, a friend, and a mentor. And she invited Pete to the first ever public Enneagram class with Dr. Kathleen Spieth, one of the co-creators of the modern Enneagram system. And Pete then helped develop and host many of the first public Enneagram programs and collaborated with the top practitioners as they all learned to apply the Enneagram to themselves and their relationships and then their clients long before the publication of the early Enneagram books. And for over 45 years, Peter has facilitated hundreds of Enneagram workshops for corporations and nonprofits, universities, small businesses, organizations, and churches around the world. He is a certified teacher with the Enneagram Professional Training Program and a faculty member for the Narrative Enneagram School, and has trained and certified over 800 Enneagram professionals and presented at the first international conference at Stanford and many other events. I'm so excited that you get to learn about the Enneagram or expand your knowledge of it from Pete. So let's just dive in and get the skinny from Peter O'Hanrahan.
Oh, Pete, after our sessions, I am so excited to have this public conversation about the Enneagram. So take me back to that it has to be me moment when you decided that you wanted to go into counseling all those years ago.
Well, that's an interesting question. Gosh, I was, I'm an old guy now, so I was coming of age
You're not that old.
In the early 1970s, and so there was a lot of turmoil going on. There was the American War in Vietnam. There was, the women's liberation movement, the gay, racial issues. There was all that going on, and so I actually dropped out of college and dropped into what I call community mental health. So I got a job at the local peer counseling and crisis intervention center, where I was trained as a peer counselor and someone who could get on the phones and, of course, also meet with small groups and promote and teach people, do some counseling myself, but also to teach other people how to do peer counseling with one another. It was just that time. And so, and I just kept going because it made a lot of sense to me. And also because, a lot of the turmoil we had back in those days, people had good ideas and they had certain values and they wanted to, of course, we did want to end the war in Vietnam, but there was a lot of kind of problems. I mean, people just didn't know how to cooperate and get along. And I realized, we need some psychology here. This is
that sounds familiar, Pete.
Yeah, I'm sure that comes up for other people too. We need some psychology here.
We're in some turmoil right now in the world, and people screaming at each other. We need a lot more listening and collaboration. So this is very much speaking to my heart and resonating. What about the it has to be me moment where you decided to move to California and Berkeley specifically?
Yeah, well, we had kind of burned out, and this was in 74, 75, and my partner was actually quite ill. She's type 2 on the Enneagram. She had absorbed a lot of other people's emotions and tension and stress, and she was very ill. And at some point, I kind of looked at her and went, "We got to move." And so we went to Berkeley, California, to study the holistic health, Chinese medicine, bodywork, all the new stuff that was happening out there in Berkeley, California. So we needed healing for ourselves. And fortunately, we connected with the right people and the right teachers, and we got it. She got better, I got better, and we opened up a holistic center and a large dance studio in Berkeley and launched ourselves into a new place.
How did you get better?
Well, I started taking care of my body more, eating better, um, eating, exercising, de-stressing, and also working on my own psychological and emotional issues because I was not in great shape. Let's put it that way. So I had a lot of work to do. So I started out with getting counseling. I'd already started in Maryland, where I was from, but there were just wonderful teachers and counselors in Berkeley at the time. So,
And then this next iteration where this opportunity came up to be part of the first public class about the Enneagram, what did you think when you saw that come up?
oh, I thought it was, I'm a California guy at this point, but it had a kind of a weird name to it and a weird diagram. And,
what is this hippie California
there was
stuff?
a little bit, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't really solid or was a little too out there, too woo-woo even for me. And so the house I was living in, the group house, we got a call from Helen Palmer. And Helen Palmer was our kind of mentor. She was the teacher of meditation, psychology, and also a teacher of intuition. And she used to give people readings. And I kind of, again, was resisting any kind of psychic whatever. I didn't believe in any of that stuff. On the other hand, Helen was really psychic. That's all I can say. She was just incredibly intuitive. And so she would, coach people or give them readings. And so she was very much respected by many of us in Berkeley at the time. She called the house and said, look, there's this class happening and you should go, this Enneagram class. And because it was Helen, we went. And we went to a neighborhood in Berkeley, and there was just a bunch of houses, and it's a house with a bunch of people, and the line went all the way down the block. And we're like, what's going on? And again, we had no idea what we were getting into, but she, the person teaching the class was Dr. Kathleen Spieth, who became our Enneagram teacher, therapist, fourth way teacher. I mean, she was just a tremendously brilliant person who had been close to the beginning of the Enneagram system with Claudio Naranjo in Berkeley. And this was the first public class. There were classes, Claudio Naranjo was using it in his group, a Seekers After Truth group called SOT. He also gave a couple classes up on the Holy Hill where the seminaries were all gathered. And that's interesting because some of those people took the Enneagram pretty quickly out around the world particularly through the Catholic network. But here we were watching people talk about the way they saw the world. There was a panel every week for an evening panel. And there were 9 panels because there were 9 Enneagram types, right? Enneagram is 9. Yeah. And I thought this was a cool way to learn psychology because people were talking about themselves in a very intelligent way, in a guided way. And Kathy Spieth was just a brilliant interviewer. But then it came to my night. Fell off the chair, and I'm like, so all of a sudden I was, I became an enthusiast on the spot.
Ooh, so tell me about going from resistance to persistence. Is that a good way to say it? What was it that's, besides hearing other people speak about themselves with insight and clarity and vulnerability, what was it about your personal interaction and intersection and experience with it that really invited you to really lean into this?
It's right from the beginning, it was such a great map of human beings. And it is kind of just a map. And it's been used in centuries past to map out different kinds of information. That's another story. But it's actually the 9 type structures that the Enneagram described are all found in the psychological literature. In other words, the Enneagram didn't make up these personality types. They're out there and people knew about them, but they were scattered in different places and different books. And also because the Enneagram kind of brought a lot of knowledge together into this organized system. And so it was just a great way to understand ourselves and the people that we were, living with, at home and at work. And I was at the time, there was this very strong, what we call transpersonal psychology community in the Bay Area.
Yes.
And you probably know about that yourself. But
Well, one of my therapists is a transpersonal somatic therapist. So
totally.
yeah, Pete
Yeah.
Coles, who I've had on the podcast, dear listener,
Yeah.
you would remember my
So,
conversation with Pete.
so
Yeah.
this combination of spirituality and psychology,
Yeah.
and it just spoke to, I felt like I had a part in the human community,
Oh,
right? My
yeah.
type 8 can kind of feel somewhat like, I don't really fit in here, but now I had place. And it was very precise, not only about the problems and the work to be done, but it was also very good about kind of celebrating the strengths.
Yes, that is what I really love about it. So it's one thing to embrace it on a personal level, and then another to then begin incorporating it into your work and seeing how it really helped you see and hold others, but also be able to shepherd others in this really beautiful way. So take me inside that progression.
Well, we had a center, as I said. It was an expansive time in Berkeley. I just put it that way. We didn't realize we were going to expand to that degree, but we had a lot of groups. We had clients. We had the center, healing center. We had a big dance studio. We could do gatherings, and it was a lot of fun. And dance, and tai chi, and body work, and dance jam. I mean, it was great. And of course, even then, with all of the good intentions that we had to build this community, there were a lot of difficulties interpersonally, right? As there often are. And so when we got the Enneagram, we were like, okay, I get it. You see the world differently. I see it this way, you see it that way, and we don't have to make it so personal. And, it just helped us sort out our relationships, and it happened so quickly and so effectively that it really changed our scene, and it also changed it changed my life basically, because I
Yeah,
wanted to get along with people. I wanted good relationships.
Gosh, wouldn't that be lovely? I mean, it's wonderful, isn't it, when we have a common lexicon and there's a shortcut to finding common ground and listening to each other.
Yeah.
So we're all going from the same lexicon now, listener. We'll bring you in. Let's just go over the basics of you've touched on this a little bit in our conversation so far about exactly what the Enneagram is.
Right. Okay, well, in this Enneagram of personality types, because it's used for other things, but the Enneagram of personality types. So there's a 9-pointed diagram, and the diagram illustrates 9 different ways of seeing the world. And 9 different ways of forming a personality, right? We need a personality in this world. We need an ego structure. I'm not one that says the ego is bad and, whatever. I mean, even, in terms of working in a spiritual way, it's like, it's good to have a healthy ego and a personality that gets us to able to participate in the world around us. And there are patterns. There's patterns to that. And again, this was not new, but the fact that we could identify these structures, these type structures, could say personality type structures or character structures, really goes even deeper than personality. And then it made sense. It's like we knew, we were kind of, we were involved in psychology and holistic health and trying to understand all this stuff. And here was an incredible map. And so, and of course, it's been developed over the last 40 or 50 years. All we got was like these brief outlines from, the originators and, the guys that started this. But we were able to kind of fill in, and it just made so much sense to our personal, personal relationships, work relationships, and because the Enneagram describes people in the 3 centers. That's the other thing I liked about it. It was a holistic system, and I'm a holistic counselor. And it's like, okay, here's the Enneagram talking about head, heart, and body, and how our types, our personality types, and our character structure is based in all 3 centers. We have a certain way we see the world. We have patterns in our heart center around kind of our primary emotional experience, and we have patterns in our body. And particularly, we could say neurobiology. So, and all of that fit together in a way that was just extremely helpful. And again, it's not to say that we are only our patterns. We're more than our patterns. We're more than our Enneagram type. We each of us has a unique, a kind of core self, an essential being, we might say. But in terms of personality, it's just so spot on in terms of
Yes.
patterns. The patterns in themselves are good. We need patterns, but we
Yes.
tend to get stuck in the patterns. And we've talked about this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
You lead from one center, I lead from another center. Well, right there's some fundamental differences. Right?
Yes.
I'm a body-based type. You lead with your head center.
So within the 9 and the 3 centers, there's 3 within the 3.
Three
right?
within the 3, yeah.
Yeah. So because I'm a 7 and then you're an 8, you sit in. Yeah, I'm a very much a heady person. What you said something a while back that just sort of struck me. The difference between personality and character. How would you define the difference between those two things? Because I think they often get blurred.
Right. Well, first of all, when we say character, there's at least 3 different meanings to that. Our English language is not very precise when it comes to psychological terms. I'll just say that. So when I say character structure, I don't mean that like someone has a good character or not so good character or good ethics or not. I'm thinking more about the deeper patterns inside of us that kind of how we are organized in terms of a structure. And, we talk about the Enneagram as a system of personality types, but again, that's just kind of the outer reflection. And personality actually can kind of change over time. I would say I have a better personality now than I used to, all that work I did. But my type structure, my Enneagram type did not change. It just got kind of better, you know what I mean? Got healthier. And so underneath personality, or a little further, deeper inside of ourselves, it's kind of the way we know who we are to ourselves. It's kind of like our patterns of emotion and again, thinking and emotion and being in our bodies, and how we respond to situations, sometimes how we react, automatically to situations, and all that's going on. And it's all those 3 centers are all working together. It is a holistic system, but they each have a particular function that's a little bit different from the other. So I don't know if I'm answering.
So we've got these 9 basic types.
Yeah.
Can we just go do a bit of just a quick overview of the 9?
Sure.
So should we go 1 to 9, or do you want to start with 7 and 8,
sure,
which is you and me? You do whatever you want to do. But
okay, well, this is the quick version, right?
Yeah.
You stop me if I'm going too quickly. So we start at 1, which is called the perfectionist, sometimes called the reformer, and also a good term is the improver. There's no one word that we're completely committed to. We're just trying to have a word or phrase that describes these types. So number 1 is like the improver. They have their body-based type, and innately in their bodies, they have a sense of how things can fit together in the best way. And they're here to help us understand what that is. And they're going to work really hard to get things organized and be a good person. They organize themselves. And it's not that the rest of us don't want to be a good person. It's just for ones, that's like their number 1 goal. And they look and see things that need better organizing, or sometimes correction, or getting put in the right place, and which is a tremendous value in this world. You know what I mean? If you're putting up a bridge or a highway or a big building, you want at least some of those structural engineers to be type 1s, because you've got to get it right.
Yeah.
And so getting it right is really important. And any trait, any aspect of the types, which can be overdone. And so that's where 1s get in trouble, because now there's this pressure on them. They got to get it right all the time. And they have what's called a critical mind. They can kind of see, again, how things fit together, and when things are out of place and where things need improvement, which is a tremendous asset. But if you overdo it, it's hard. You're seeing the flaws all the time. You're not seeing the good stuff.
Yes. So it's that shadow thing again, like in Jungian philosophy, or the way I say it is, your superpower can be your Achilles heel when not held in balance.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And so because they have this critical mind and their tendency to be judgmental, they are the leaders in self-acceptance because that's where they need to go to accept
Ooh.
themselves. And the Serenity Prayer comes to mind. It's not just
Yes.
from AA,
Yes.
it's also.
Yeah. And I'm in Al-Anon. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So change what you can, accept what you can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so for ones to be able to access some level of acceptance and hold both. Yes, you can make things better. You can also accept that things are in some way, at some higher level, they're perfect the way they are, in God's, plan. So, so next door to ones are the type twos. Now, these are heart-based type people because twos are like the helpers, the givers, and they have this tremendous ability to feel into other people and what's happening in other people's feelings, other people's needs. And they're so good at that they can lose themselves. So the irony is they cannot know their own feelings, but they're there. There's a lot of feelings going on, but it's not clear. Whose feelings are these? Is this my feelings? Somebody else's feelings? I kind of, taken into my body. And so it's a big challenge for twos, but their tremendous gift is that they invite connection. There's this invitation. They reach towards people and they invite us to connect. And I love the twos for that. I try to meet that invitation because my tendency would just be to kind of like, oh, okay, who are you and what's the deal here? And like, well, you know what I'm saying? I'm a different type. So I want to meet that invitation.
Yeah, it's a beautiful invitation, but
it
can
is.
be scary.
I mean, it's not that the rest of us can't do this at times, but that's where the twos live. And they have what's called a tremendous abundance of mirror neurons. They have neural networks.
Yes. So they spend a lot of time in parasympathetic. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. They can get pretty worked up, but what happens is that they can duplicate, as we all can to some degree, other people's emotional and physical experience in their bodies.
So somebody that describes themselves as an empath,
right,
could be a two.
Yeah, I mean, don't have to be a two, but could well be. Well be a two. I mean, let's say it differently. All twos are empaths to some degree, and there are other types that can be empathic. But twos, not only are they empathic, but they want to move forward to connect and help.
They will come to you.
They will come to you
to seek out the connection.
That's right.
Okay.
And some empaths they'll be very empathic, but they won't necessarily come forward in the same way.
Ooh, yes, that's an important distinction.
So anyway,
yeah.
So that's the twos, and they have a lot of big hearts, and it's clear, I mean, it's classically more of a women's role, but there's a lot of guys who are type twos also, and that's just very sweet and feelingful. And if they don't take care of themselves, not so great. So next, yeah.
No, sorry. I want to just ask you about when you're dealing with the two, what's coming up for me is that the shadow part of it is that it's hard to differentiate what's yours and what's mine, like you said before. Right. And that can, okay.
Right. And they also want a lot of response from us. They thrive on approval and recognition. And for the most part, I'm happy to give approval and recognition, but sometimes it's like, well, like it's too much or something, you know what I mean? And then, or I don't know what they want or what they need because I'm not a two. They have to say it directly, and they have a hard time doing that, And I'm like, well, come on, what do you need? How are you feeling? Well, and they get like, I don't, So, and so they get mad because we don't feel out what they need. And once they learn the Enneagram, it's like, we're not as empathic as you are. We don't know. You got to tell us. Well, I don't know. Well, we need to have a conversation, and we need to have repeated conversations. Put the attention on you. How are you? What's going on? How do you feel? And so there's this wonderful tips for people in relationships based on the type or whatever, and it's just such a big help, I mean, I don't need a lot of approval and recognition, so that wouldn't come to my mind. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But they
It wouldn't even occur to you to give it because you don't need it if you're not aware of what the other person needs.
if you're not aware of what the other person,
Mm.
so such a big help.
Yes.
So anyway.
Okay, what about the threes?
Okay, the threes, they're the go-getters. they're the three, and they're also heart-based types. But the irony is they tend to put their feelings aside in order to get things done, to accomplish things. And mostly it's about getting the work done. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's just about having a great image and making an impact on other people, like if you're a performer in a certain way or whatever. But they are very tuned into other people's expectations, and they'll meet those expectations in order to be successful. And their neurobiology, they're just on the go. They're go, go, go. The original term for them was ego go, like the Energizer Bunny. I don't know if you have that in Australia, but the Energizer Bunny keeps going and going and going. And they're phenomenal. They have all this. And now, of course, if they overdo that, they can become exhausted. Even they have, limits to how much they can go. But, threes say, yeah, I wake up in the morning, the first thing that shows up is my work list. When I go to bed at night, the last thing I look at is my work list. And if there's something I accomplished during the day, I check it off. And if it's not on the list, I write it down on the list and then check it off just because.
I mean, we thought I might have been a 3 in the first 5 minutes.
Right. Well, there's some, other high energy types too, but the threes, they're just like so tuned in to expectations, and they'll perform. They're the performers.
Mm.
You could say the performers. And in many countries, particularly in the United States, and other places too, threes get a lot of positive feedback. It's like, hey, we like that you can work so hard and get things done.
Achieve.
Right. We're just going to give you a lot of recognition and money and approval, and just keep working for us, okay? Which, of course, can be a trap for threes. Like, well, wait a minute. Are you taking care of yourself? Is this the work you really want to be doing? So threes have to work on slowing down, and not to become slow all the time. Their fast pace is fine, but to balance that with some slowing down and some breath and getting down below that diaphragm into the, they carry a lot of energy in the chest, and they're very assertive about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, support my program of success or get out of the way. So sometimes they're pretty aggressive, and sometimes they're not very lovely and nice. I mean, it just depends on the person, but so anyway.
So those are the 3 heart.
Well, there's 4. Number 4.
There's it's not 3 and 3 and 3.
Well, it is 3 and 3, but type 1 is part of the body group.
Okay, so sorry. Okay.
Type 4 is also part of the heart center group.
Okay, so it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, and that's the 3, 4, 5, 6,
right.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Right, but it is organized because they're all close to one. I mean,
yes.
2, 3, and 4
we'll get
are the
into
heart
that.
types.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So 4.
Right, so 4 is a heart.
And the 4s are really heart. They're just full of emotion. What can I say? And
dear Lisa, our friend, she's a 4.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you have trouble with your own emotions, you're going to have trouble with 4s because they just have so much emotion, and they want to have deep connection with everything and anybody, and and they invite us to come inside. Twos and 3s, their attention goes out to other people so much of the time. 4s, they want to be connected, they want to be seen and recognized, but they also want their interior selves and their deeper emotional selves, and they go there. And they are no strangers to the joys and sorrows. They have very intense emotional lives, and they're no strangers to, let's say, grief. Because they know that. Sometimes they can get caught in that. There's a kind of melancholy about 4s at times. Not always, but traditionally, we look in the English literature, for example, it's like the 4s, it's like walking out on the moors without a...
Oh, yeah. The 4 wrote Wuthering Heights, for sure.
Man. They're seeking that deep, wonderful connection, and they're idealists. They're romantic idealists. So we say the romantic, better I say the romantic idealists, because they have these ideals about how deep and wonderful it could be, and they can be disappointed by ordinary life, and sadly by the rest of us, because we're not as, available or connected or deeply, connected to our own feelings or heart. And so it's good to know this so we can work it out,
I mean, you're talking about this and I'm thinking, gosh, I've got lots of 4 qualities. I've got lots of 3 qualities. As you say, there's this crossover and we've got all these different things, but it's what you lead with, what your
it's
dominant
what you lead with,
sort of
right.
view and needs are.
Yeah. So, but fours, everybody loves the fours when they're on stage, when they're performing, the singer-songwriters, the actors and actresses, the writers. It's not like they're all fours. I'm not saying that, but but fours dominate the world of artistic expression and aesthetics, and high fashion. And I mean, it's just some, and when they're doing their art, we love them. But when they're up close, it's challenging. And of course, I've been living with fours for the last 40 years, so I know something about this, and it's been great. It's been turbulent, but also great. So I mean, because they invite us to come into our hearts, deeply into our hearts, and have things matter. So the romantic.
So is part of the shadow of a 4 resentment when others can't meet you in that deep, transparent?
I think it's less resentment and it's more disappointment.
Okay.
Because there's a longing in fours, that longing for depth and wholeness. It's like they're the ones that feel they get it. Like we've been cast out of the garden, and trying to get back there, and it's hard to do in an imperfect world with an imperfect, So kind of like the ones, they can be very critical, but it's not about right or wrong. It's about whether something is authentic or not. I have a high standard for authenticity. And if they're in a relationship or they're in a job situation that doesn't feel authentic to them, they're out of there. They could be very successful in many ways because they're next to the 3s and they can kind of do that. But if it's not authentic enough, they're out of there.
So there's no hiding with a 4.
Not much. And, so anyway, there's a lot I could say, but we need to move on, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. 5s.
All right.
What
so
are
now
they
we're
called?
leaving the heart types are over there. Now, remember, everybody has a mind, everybody has a heart, everybody has a body. We have all 3 centers, but we have a lead center. So now we're crossing over. There's a kind of a space in the bottom of the Enneagram. Sometimes we call it the existential hole in the bottom of the Enneagram. And the 4s and 5s are kind of on either side of that, kind of looking down, going, it's appealing, but it's also scary. And, but that's where a lot of our existential philosophy comes from, 4s and 5s. Anyway, 5s are head-based types. And these are the deep thinkers and the observers. And the key to understanding 5s is they have a very sensitive nervous system. Very sensitive. Many people do, but the 5s, it's a very sensitive nervous system. And if that's not valued or protected, which often is the case because people just don't know about this stuff. And so 5s can kind of go up into their heads and detach. So it's easy for them to feel intruded upon or their space is invaded, or the too muchness that for the rest of us, it's just like, hey, great party. Let's keep it going. And they're like, when can I get out of here? So, and they need a lot of privacy. They need a lot of space so they can kind of relax that nervous system and also think about everything, review. And it's not, and a lot of 5s say, I have feelings. I just don't have them at the moment. I have to kind of, when I feel safe in my own space, I can, So 5s are observers. It's easier to observe than participate, but doesn't mean they can't be great participators. I think it was Jung who talked about sometimes our inferior function, when we work with it and develop it, it actually becomes a more pure expression of who we are, less distorted. It's not our usual shtick. So, but 5s,
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about how the 4 and the 5 sit next to each other. So when a 5 chooses to participate on their own terms, when they've had time to process it, and then they show up to a 4 who's demanding this deep
Right.
connection, that would be extremely fulfilling for both of them when a 4 allows a 5 to find their time to meet them.
Right.
Would that be a good sort of
That's a great way to say it. Thank
understanding?
you.
And okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I mean, just you going through these 9 types like this, you can see how knowing your type and knowing the type of the person you're in an intimate partnership with is so constructive and helpful to create more understanding of each other and allowing the space to find your way into each other and so forth. It's so incredibly valuable.
Right.
What's the shadow of the 5 again? Flesh that out for me a little bit.
Well, the shadow of the 5 is becoming overly detached. That's their major defense. They go up into their heads and kind of shut down on the body, shut down on the feelings, shut down on the body, and they can be brilliant in their minds. And if you're really that's your whole purpose in life, is to be a scholar or a scientist or a physicist or whatever. I mean, you can really do the mind, a life of the mind, and contribute so much to our knowledge as a human species. But if you're in relationships with people or want relationships, you gotta work on, gotta have at least some of heart and body online as well. And they can do that if they choose. The thing for us to know about 5s is they need a lot of privacy. So if they go off by themselves for a while or a long while or whatever, they're, as long as they say, hey, I'm going now, I'll come back later, I'm not breaking the relationship, I just need the day off or the evening off, and they come and go, they can be very good at relationships, but you have to give them their space and not be banging on the door all the time or intruding on their space and intruding on them, Right.
So yeah, a 4 and a 5 in a relationship, and some of these other things, I'm just thinking, my goodness, and a 7 and a 5. I mean, oh my goodness.
Well, you can start seeing how. I mean, right. Once you know the types, you can start kind of predicting to some degree what's going to happen.
When the conflict's going to happen.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're
not giving me what I need.
Yeah. You're often or the parents of a 5 child and they themselves, maybe they're 3 and 1, type 1, right? And they're like out in the world and they're making things happen. And they've got a son who's up in the room reading books. It's like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with us? How did we screw up? This guy, he doesn't want to, it's just, he's different. Now, 5s do want to be invited, by the way. They say, I do want to be invited. I do want you to reach towards me. I really appreciate that. And I might say no, but I will also say yes. And I want to be invited. And so the problem, of course, is that all of us, we sometimes signal from our type structure a message that doesn't adequately represent us. So the 5s, for example, might, they might have a message in their nonverbals that say, don't bother me, or don't disturb my, and that may not be the full story there, because they say, no, I do want to be in contact. So this is also something to be aware of. It's like, sometimes we got to go a little further than what we're picking up, through the nonverbals.
Yeah, ask questions.
That's questions. Right.
not be leading with assumptions about what people are thinking and needing.
Right.
Oh.
All right. So 5, 6, and 7 are the head-based types. And all these folks, they got to figure things out. Now, the rest of us, we can appreciate that. We could do that, but it's not as important, or it's like starting there. You know what I mean? My brain doesn't come online in the morning until I've had, at least a couple cups of coffee. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but with the 5, 6, and 7, they got to figure it out. We were joking about this the other day. We talked about our friends who are type 6, the loyalist, the loyal skeptic. And these are people of the questioning mind. And so they're always asking questions. And sometimes the questions are like, enough with the questions already. You know what I mean? It's a very common, friction point between 6s and their family members. sometimes colleagues. And that questioning mind takes things deeper. Like, what about this Enneagram system? Really, you think that stuff works? Let's talk about that. I'm not so sure. And they'll get into it. Right. Anyways, the sixes are the people who we say the loyal skeptics or the questioner. Loyal skeptic meaning, on the one hand, once they've invested in a relationship or a project or a group or a cause, they are going to be loyal through thick and thin. And they're going to be responsible, and they're going to do what they said. And it may take them a while to invest, but once they'll be loyal. And I value that about sixes because they're willing to be direct about issues. In fact,
and so a 6 and a 4 together when they're meeting would be whoosh amazing if you were being an authentic 6.
If you were being authentic, right? But if the sixes aren't in their hearts, if they're also kind of up in their heads a bit much, the 4s are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, so. They're going to be disappointed.
But imagine the compliments that can happen. You know what I mean? It's like 4s and 6s can kind of complement one another as long as they, in this case, work it out. And instead of saying, you're just this terrible human being, they can say, I understand this is not your strong point, but would you be willing to sit down with me for X amount of time and we'll, so.
Yeah.
But they're also skeptical, they're skeptical.
Yeah, is that the shadow of what's the shadow of the 6?
The shadow of 6 is doubting mind. Questioning mind turns into a doubting mind. And so they doubt themselves, they doubt other people. And, and occasionally they overcome that by signing up for something like, now, becoming a true believer. It's an interesting paradox, They're like, oh, now I'm signed up to be on this program and all my doubts have gone away, but doesn't necessarily last. Because is this going to be okay? And 6s are the people that look out for us. They are the people that have the most sensitive alarm systems. They're so quickly alarmed to the presence or the possibility of threat or danger or even problems. And they can see that stuff coming,
So a 6 with a 1, if we're on a project in a system where we've got to build something and the 1s are getting the infrastructure and figuring it out, and the 6 is going to tell them, wait a second, what if this happens or this happens? I can see how those two people in a work situation.
Right.
Yeah.
They have 6s always want plan B and sometimes plan C. Really. Not just they'll go to plan C because they want to be prepared. And they feel safer that way. And because they have this tremendously sensitive alarm system, they're the ones that guard the safety of the family, of the group, of the community.
I'm pretty sure my mum is a 6. I'm going to send her to you to talk to you because but I'm fairly certain she's a 6, but maybe not, but we'll see.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. Because so 6s, they hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Well, I'm not even sure they hope for the best. They hope for having a good plan. So that anything that goes wrong, they're prepared. And then they can feel safer and more relaxed about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, because of this fight, flight, or freeze response, which we all have to some degree, and the 6s really have it, they can respond to perceived threat either by freezing or fawning, they might say, but anyway, but kind of like, and they withdraw, or they're getting very careful, or they can go into fight mode. And so the external behavior is completely different. And that's important to know about the Enneagram types, that we can't always tell somebody's type from their external behavior. Sometimes we can, but there's 6s who, like Mel Gibson on the one hand, Woody Allen on the other. Just saying.
Yeah.
People like, wait a minute, that can't be the same personality type. But, 6s know this because oftentimes even the most careful, cautious 6s, with anxiety and questions, when in certain situations, all of a sudden they come forward like a tiger. There are people who are threatened. So there's movement back and forth there, but there are some people who are more at one extreme than the other, you know what I mean? And so external behavior, you got to be a little careful, but 6s do need to figure things out. And they might figure it out by asking questions, or they might do it by provoking you just to see what will happen.
Ooh.
What are you doing here? What are you about? Why are you here?
Oh, so
Why do you get
do
to?
sixes thrive on that intellectual sparring and that spirited debate? And
They do. Okay. Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah.
And anyway,
yeah, because I could have had a 6 wing. I remember we spoke about
we
this.
talked
So
about that, right?
yeah, okay, all right. So I'm a 7.
You're a 7.
Let's
So
talk
tell us
about
about
the
sevens,
sevens.
Tess. Come on, you know something about this now.
Have intimate connection with 7.
Right.
As you said to me, you're a raging 7.
Right. You're indeed high energy 7. Sevens, it's like we have some of the flavors and characteristics of the people next to us on the Enneagram.
Mm.
And so 7s and 6s, there's a lot in common in terms of wanting to figure things out, and but yet so close but so different, because where 6s are going to see, okay, that could go wrong, and we need to plan for this, and we need more information, and we need to know who's who and who we can trust. And 7s are like, wow, a new possibility. Let's go. So 7s may tend to err on the side of being overly positive, if that's possible. So, but 7s, again, we talked about the fast pace of the mind of the 7. It's like leaps forth into the possibilities, the realm of possibilities, having options and possibilities and future plans. And it's all so wonderful because 7s want to enjoy life fully. That's their number one goal. And they want to be part of it. They want to enjoy it. And with some 7s, it's more the life of the mind. And some 7s, it's maybe more the life of the physical activity. Some 7s, it's maybe more like good food, good drink, good company. Depends also on the body type. That's another story. But 7s are, Helen Palmer used to say, it's the 7s have like champagne in their veins. They don't have blood, they have champagne. It's just bubbling, And so it can be the life of the party. And of course, the problem there is they overdo that. They may go to a party at some point and say, gee, I don't feel like it tonight. But too bad. That's the deal. You've sold yourself. It's being everybody, what's wrong? You're being quiet? What's wrong?
Oh, that happens to me all the time.
Right. So, for 7s to kind of calm down and also get down, because they tend to be up here, and the life of the mind is unlimited. Unfortunately, the life of the body is limiting, and 7s don't like that. They don't want to be limited.
Yes, I do not like to be limited.
Right.
It's all about freedom.
It's all about
freedom in every sense of the word for me.
Right. So
imagine
somebody trying to tell you, what you can't do.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's like a red rag to a bull for me. I'll show you. You want to bet? So 7s are visionaries.
They are visionaries, yes, especially the smart ones. They are visionaries because they look out to a better future, and they're very creative in their thinking. And they, as we mentioned before, 7s, the way they think is it's associative. They're not linear. If they start here and then they associate, oh, well, that takes me there, and then that takes me to another idea, and before you know it, they're across the universe. It's like if you're trying to have a conversation with a 7, that can be challenging. Wait a minute, we were just talking about this, and now you're talking about, it's like the internet. You know what I mean? It's links, and you hit a link, and you're, before you know it. And 7s can also bring those very disparate links or associations and find connections that weren't there before. Right? So, and 7s want to avoid pain. They really don't like pain. Because that's
they're hedonists,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about pleasure.
Why would you have pain if you can go to something that's fun, pleasurable?
If you can dwell in possibility and jump to the next possibility, if this one's not doing it for you.
Right.
So the shadow of the 7 is we burn out. Tell us about the shadow of that.
Shadow of the 7. It's if you just run to the next fun thing, you can actually miss out on life because parts of life are, you know, like if you think about the heart center, you know, which is so important in terms of being fully present in life, you know, a heart center will take you places that you can't get otherwise. And sometimes it's joy and sometimes it's sadness and all that happens in the heart center. And sevens know that. They get it, but it's just really hard to stay there when something is sad or painful. And so they move away, and then that doesn't, they don't learn how to kind of get there and be with it and handle it and hold it unless they really make an intention out of that. And many of them do. You know, like in a relationship, when there's a problem or there's some loss, you love people, you're going to experience loss. You know what I mean? So instead of just reframing it like everything, you know, it's all a new opportunity, which, you know, there's truth in that, but to stay a little longer with, you know, and deepen.
So would you say that sevens can be, and I know that we're really generalizing here because there's so many nuances in and around this, but would you say that sevens have asking for a friend, asking for myself, have a predisposition to go into toxic positivity because they want to bounce to the next possibility?
That can be their defense because, again, any strength of the type can also be used to kind of protect us. So yes, at sevens, they're built, the neurobiology, again, to me, I'm a body therapist, so it's all, and I've seen it in hundreds and thousands of people, you know, over 50 years. I mean, the sevens just have this amazing quickness, and they can think fast, and they like a lot of stimulation. They go for the pleasure and the good stuff. And by the way, sevens can work very hard and be successful as long as they're having fun with it, or if it's interesting,
Yes. Right?
So we don't want to dismiss the capacity of sevens to get things done, but it's got to be at least interesting. But you know, the goal for all of us really is to be able to kind of work with our patterns so we don't get stuck. You know, and that we can open up. We can have some functioning in each of our three centers, so that we can have our full life. Right.
So tell me about your full life, Mr. 8.
Okay.
Tell us about
so
the
now
8s.
We're the body types. Okay, we're at this is a different kind of people here. We're the body types, and it's just kind of maybe in some ways. Well, the center of gravity is different. You know, you can just sense this in people sometimes. You know,
you can sense it between you and I.
Yeah.
Right now, the energy, the difference in energy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. You know, so.
I'm like a balloon. I'm like a balloon, and you're like the grounding force, just inviting me to come back into my body.
Right. Yeah. So, and I have to like wake up to more perception, and you know, my head type friends are, you know, reminding me. It's not that I'm unintelligent, you understand, but anyway, body type. So I'm
with you specifically. I don't think we're ever going to say that it's unintelligent. What's an 8 called?
Yeah, you better not say it's unintelligent.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
Watch out for that. Don't mess with me. You know.
Yeah.
So the 8s tend to be like.
What do they call? What's the 8 type called?
Oh, thank you. It's the protector. So, and there's a high side and a low side with all of everybody. And the high side is 8s. We protect not only ourselves, but the people we care about, the people that are our colleagues. We protect people who are the underdogs, who are being treated, you know, poorly. So we extend our protection. And sometimes there's a demand behind that, you know. It's like the Godfather, you know. You gotta pay up. But when the heart is open, it's a great generosity of spirit. And again, if the hearts are closed, 8s can be pretty dangerous people because there's a lot of energy in the body. It comes up very fast. Conflict is not a big problem, you know. We generally see conflict as necessary. We don't necessarily like conflict, but we know ready to go. And in the neurobiology, there's a quickness to not only respond, but sometimes retaliate. You know, when I was young and somebody bumped into me going down the street, you know what I mean? I'm ready to like throw them on the ground. And of course I had to work with that, obviously, because I'd end up in jail. And of course, a lot of eights do end up in jail, but you can't. You got to work. Most of us figure out at some point we have to work with that physical reactivity.
Mm.
So anyway, and eights are hard. There's a lot of big energy. We want to do our own thing, like the sevens. God bless the parents of the eights, the little eights, because they just want to run around and "Hey, I'm in charge. You can't boss me. I'm not, like you hear that from a 3-year-old. You're kind of like, excuse me, I'm the parent here. And then the trick is not to say you're a bad kid. It's to say, honey, we live together. We have to work this stuff out. You're going to school now. You've got to follow the rules because otherwise they won't have it. It's not because you're bad. It's because you have to work it out with people. And that's kind of the message to everybody in a way. You know what I mean? If you want to work it out with people, you got to in some way mediate or manage your own type, certainly your own reactivity. So we say eights are great in battle, but they have a hard time in peacetime because we're so geared for battle that somehow conflict seems to follow us around. And I say that with some rue and some regret because I'm not, what am I, what's the problem? I'm being friendly around here. Well, people are just kind of getting, it's like, well, sometimes the energy is overly forceful.
Gosh, I can see how a 6 and an 8, the questioning coming from the head and the body sentient, the two of them ready to battle could be very fiery.
Now you're talking about my work life.
Yeah,
right. 6 colleagues. I mean, ironically, in my part of the Enneagram world, our 2 leaders were both 6s. Helen Palmer, who was one of the foremost authors and pioneers of the Enneagram, and then later her colleague, Dr. David Daniels, who was a psychiatrist and a professor at Stanford. And when the 2 of them got together, they could create this school of work. It was brilliant. And they were my leaders. Of course, they had me to back them up. So that was good.
So when you were referring earlier on in our conversation, when you said I had a lot of work to do, so are you referring to that wanting to battle, wanting to take someone down to the ground if they maligned you?
Yeah, that was part of it. And also because I had a pretty unhappy childhood experience. And as many of us do, families, even loving families, there's issues, there's stuff, you know what I mean? And parents aren't perfect. They do the best they can. And, but, I was the eldest of 5 boys and, I was in Catholic school for 8 years and that was an unpleasant experience. So basically I was, I had a lot of stored up anger.
Yes.
Body. And that's what brought me just to a large degree to doing body-based therapy because I needed to release a lot of that pent-up anger and also get to my sadness and other feelings. Right? So like, well, I have feelings. I'm mad about this. That's a feeling, right? It's like, well, yeah, but probably there's more. So,
getting to the grief.
Getting to the grief and even getting to the fear. We say at 8s, we have to work our way up to fear. You know what I mean? And it's important that we do because otherwise we go bashing around in the world and we won't register. I mean, fear is there for a very important reason, right? I mean, to keep us safe and alive and whatever.
You keep talking about fear and safety, and it is this, making fear-based decisions when we don't feel safe enough. And when you were saying that a lot of 8s end up in jail because they haven't processed their fear and, they're not able to hold.
Well, they don't have it as a
balance.
reminder of consequences, and I'm saying it's just like they just react and get into it with people and they don't stop and pause and think it through, and be a good friend and say, whoa, hold on, wait, maybe this is not the right time or the right fight. I mean, 8s and 1s, I'll include the 1s here. We have to pick our battles because otherwise there's the quality with the body types of being against things because things are not right. And we're here to tell you how they ought to be.
Hmm.
And so there's kind
Yeah.
of this against the way things are. And that's not a fun way to live. There's always things that are, for the ones, there's always things that are out of place that need improvement. And for the eights, there's always things that aren't fair or aren't being done right. And we have to like work with that. So,
Mm. So all of this body work that you found your way into when you got to Berkeley, that must have felt like rain in the desert for you.
it was a great healing process. And it also put me on a path of being a body-based therapist.
Mm.
The Enneagram has kind of taken over my life in recent years. But,
And lucky us that it has. So we talk about the types existing next to each other. So lovely 9, who gets along with everybody, sits right next to the 8. This is fascinating to me.
yeah.
So what's the 9 called?
The 9 is the peacemaker. Or
Ooh, so the
mediator.
peacemaker's sitting right next to the 8 that's
Right.
ready for
Sometimes
battle.
they because 9s blend. This is their neurobiology, by the way. And this is lovely quality that 9s can blend. They can blend with people, with the environment, with animals, with machinery, with computer. I mean, they can just kind of blend. And because their boundary system is different. And that can get them, if they don't manage that well, particularly in a high-paced modern society, it can be overwhelming, or they can blend with the wrong situation or the wrong people. So if the 9s are hanging out with the 8s, they can start kind of blending there. And if they're hanging out with the 1s, they can start blending in that direction. And the thing about 9s is they actually can show up like any type on the Enneagram. And
So
that's the mystery of the
shapeshifters.
9s. It's like they can be kind of withdrawn, introverted, kind of like the 5s. They can be very people-oriented and empathetic, like the 2s. They can be directive and in leadership roles, like the 8s. They can do all that stuff. And so the 9s, and because they have this very unique position, we say at the top of the Enneagram, right? My teacher said, imagine life is like a big pinball machine, and we're all kind of being knocked out to the sides this way and that. The 9s, they're right in the middle, and they kind of fall right down into checking out. And they remind us of the basic human condition that we tend to kind of fall asleep to what's important. And 9s have trouble staying with that and focusing on what's important to me. If they're in a good work structure, they can move mountains. If they're in a leadership role, they can be tremendous because they're so fair. They include everybody. The 9s are the glue of the human community. If we didn't have 9s, we'd all fly apart. 9s.
So you're talking about mirror neurons. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. I'll ask you about the mirror neurons. No, I just wanted to, it was coming up for me. So do 9s have really active mirror neurons as well?
Well, some do, and some don't. Again, it depends on their orientation. A lot of the women who are 9s can look on the surface like they're type 2. And they do have a lot of empathy, and therefore they do have a lot of mirror neurons. Other 9s are more oriented towards, the crops and the transportation system, and how we're going to get this house built. And
so they're more 1s. They could look like a 1.
They could look more like a 1, and they could also be more. They're not blending with people as much. They're blending with nature. They're blending with something else, and that's not the same as mirror neurons, actually. So
right.
So they're all over the place. And so when they meet the Enneagram, they can go, oh, well, I see myself in all of these. And it's like, well, you know what? If that's your reaction, you have to consider the possibility of being 9.
So if you can be anything, and you can morph and transition and take on qualities of all these different things very easily and identify in a comfortable way, what's the shadow of the 9, just not knowing what you want? And your needs getting lost in other people's or causes.
They can lose track of what's important, like steering their own lives. Now, they're so good at going with the flow, which can be a lovely quality, but if you don't make the effort to go, now, wait a minute, where am I in this? and what's my priority, and what do I want for myself, and what are my goals. Then you can kind of just float down the river of life. And maybe that's okay for people. I mean, I would suggest that the world being in the condition it's in these days, maybe not so much okay, because we really got to take some action, because we're so overloading the circuits. But there's plenty of places in this world where nines are they are going with the flow. They're embedded in their families and their villages and their communities, with nature. I mean, and they're just living a pretty simple life in that regard. And there's
So for someone who's a 9, would this be an accurate thing to say about it? I know it's, again, how long is a piece of string? There's a lot more nuance to this, but I mean, a lot of women specifically, and I want to ask you about the difference between men and women in just a minute. People that say, I people please, I spend all my time taking care of others and I get all the crumbs and I don't take care of myself. And I know that we could say that any type could be doing that. But are 9s specifically more predisposed to be those kinds of people?
9 women are more predisposed to that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because, again, we can talk about women's gift. We can talk about women's roles. We can talk about the expectations. And so, and so 9s who are women, like the 2s, they can get to a point all of a sudden where they kind of wake up and go, wait a minute, this is not me, how did I get here? I just kind of blended. And so that then there can be anger there. By the way, 9s have anger in their system. It's not the quantity of the anger that's the issue. It's the placement in the system. It's like body types. We have this kind of layer of anger. We got to get through the anger, and 9s avoid getting angry, and so it's hard for them to get down to where the other parts of who they are and what's important. I mean, they kind of bounce off the discomfort or the disagreement, or they kind of bounce off of that. And so they have, ironically, for 9s to be able to access their anger is a very important step in their development. Anybody in relationship with a 9, if they don't get angry at us a little bit, at least a little bit, they're not going to be fully there. I have 9s in my family. I got to go after them because I know all of a sudden they're just not talking to me and they're not looking at me and they're not even really, I realize, okay, you got to talk to me about what did I say? What did I do that made you upset?
Yeah. I mean, it is that, again, like the Jungian thing. You have to befriend your shadow. You have to be in relationship.
Yeah, they hate conflict. It's just hard in their bodies. They're not deficient as human beings. It's not even a neurotic issue, although it could become neurotic. It's existential. 9s are built that way. They're built for peace. They're built for comfort seeking. They're built for, and it's very disturbing, like they can barely even get it out sometimes. Like, yeah, I disagree, or I don't like it when you said that, and then sometimes they blow up, which is not fun. The sleeping volcano blows up.
Yeah. So you talked about a 9 needing to get in touch with their anger, and an 8 needing to get in touch with the fear. Yep, vulnerability and fear, and the 7s with pain. Is that what you would say?
Right, and limitation.
Ooh, okay, thank you. I needed to know that for myself. So pain and limitation. Okay, I'm going to come back to this males and females thing in just a minute, because I think it might be a more productive way to go into it after we've learned about these subtypes and these wings. So we've got these basic 9. So we've got this foundation now, and then we start getting into the subtypes and the wings. And so how does that get fleshed out?
What I love about the Enneagram, this is a number of things. One is that I really appreciate when we understand the structure and the organization. Maybe that's part of my way I see it and how I teach it, but there are structures here and they're all connected. And so once you understand the pieces and how they fit together, it's understandable. at first it's like it's overwhelming. You know what I mean? It's complex, but we can get it at the first level of learning and get a lot of value out of it. And for people who want to go further, there's just levels of further learning. When you mentioned the wings, you know, that we say the types on either side of us on the circle are what's called the wings, you know, like, or, you know, it's a good word, you know. And those are pretty close to our type. We share a lot of things in common with the wings. And we have two wings on both, one on each side, but one of them tends to become more important or predominant. Well, don't ask me why. It's just, you know, it's what we see. And so that gives our type a certain flavor, right? So, you know, for you, you have a strong 8 wing, right? So you lean in that direction. And so as a 7, you like to be in charge. You like to be the leader. You like to make things happen. I mean, you know, you can say better about that yourself. And I'm an 8, but I have a 9 wing. So I like being able to go to my 9 wing. And I can hang out and relax and sit under a tree for a while and blend a little bit. It's not easy, but I can, you know, believe it or not, I can actually mediate some things.
So that would be very helpful for you when you're dealing with a lot of 6s in your work.
Right.
And you're getting rubbed up. You need to lean into the.
You know, there was a couple of years in the narrative, there was the Enneagram professional training program when we had, there were 3 teachers in addition to me. There were 3 6s. And the office staff were 3 4s. And who became the mediator? Well, I was the director for a while. I had to make this stuff work. So I just accessed the 9 wing to be the mediator. And, you know what I mean? Because otherwise it was just like, you know, crazy. And we hung in there and we made it work. But I'm just saying, it's helpful to know what your wing type is. And also, I look at my 7 wing and say, I need more of that. And so it's a reminder that I can actually go there and access some of the, not get stuck in the overly obsessive, it's all got to fit together in a certain way. I can say, it's just like, take that piece and this piece and let yourself, you know, think in an associative pattern and make it more fun. I'm like, fun? Yeah, fun? It's like, yeah, you could have more fun, you know? So.
Then let's get into the subtypes.
Right.
So then so I'm a 7 with a strong 8 wing.
Right.
And a 1-to-1 subtype. Can we go through those subtypes?
Yeah, we can. Right. And just a caution to people who are listening to this. There's some stuff available. If you want to, you know, I have an article on my website. There's places to go for more information on this because it's a lot of information to try to take in. But
And I will put all of Pete's links in the show notes so you can go and enter his world and all these amazing articles. But yeah, let's just dear listener, if you're getting overwhelmed,
in the body
come
center.
back and listen later. But I'm just loving all of this, so I want the information.
So in the body center, there are 3 powerful instinctual drives. You can call them instincts, you can call them drives. And common to us as animals, you know what I mean? It's like basic stuff. The animals have instincts. Human beings have instincts, and we've evolved them over a long, long time in human evolution. So our instincts are now kind of active in our current society and civilization. Sometimes they do well, and sometimes actually there's some big problems. But in any event, 3 powerful drives, and one is self-preservation, which is food, warmth, shelter, family. It's the material resources that keeps life alive, keeps us alive. Self-care, it's our daily rhythms of sleep, work, play, relate, coming, you know, it's just basic body wellness and capacity. It's a certain aspect of the life force, of the chi. And there's a way actually to kind of identify this stuff, but I'll keep going for the moment. So self-preservation can be very when in hard times, things really can kind of collapse into self-preservation because you got to have food and you got to stay warm and you need a roof over your head. When the situation is better, And when the heart is more involved, self-preservation has this quality: we're going to take care of everybody. We're going to make this world work well. We're going to make the buildings. We're going to get the factories. We're going to grow the crops. Everybody has a place in this. So, and that's lovely. So self-preservation, and of course, well, I was thinking of, let me just complete the three. So self-preservation instinct. So we all have it. With some of us, it's a big deal. Some of us, not so much. The second instinct is the sexual instinct. And of course, this is also about survival, because we wouldn't be here as a species. Sometimes I think about all my ancestors and having sex and creating babies. And I'm like, thank you. I mean, bless you. I don't even know their names, but I have a connection to them. And so it is the sexual instinct. We call it one-to-one because when people hear sexual instinct, they think it's all about sex, which not necessarily. It's something about a certain intensity, a certain vitality that has a certain charisma, pizzazz. And so we say one-to-one because in relationships, this instinct takes us into more like you and me. It's not that we're not just part of the family. We're actually here, two people, and we're making direct contact. And it's self-preservation is the right to be alive. The one-to-one instinct is about the right to be seen and loved. It's like our human rights that come with these instincts. So there's that, and everybody has the everybody has if you don't have a partner, you have a close friend, or there's somebody that you're just looking for, kind of lining up that one-to-one connection space. And for some people, it's one-to-one in their spiritual practice. So, and then the third instinct, powerful drive, is the social instinct, because we are social creatures, and we made it. We survived. It's also survival because we wouldn't have made it if we hadn't been able to organize ourselves first in small bands to cooperate, and then look at us now. It's an enormous civilization. 8 or 9 billion people on the planet, and so social is it's not about how many friends we have. It's about social structures. Where do we fit into the social structure? What's our role in the community? And again, there's very few people that live in a cave in the mountains or take the path of the monastic, let's say. There are people like that, but most of us, however we feel about it, we are part of a society and a community, and we're all functioning more or less together to make things work. So, and the Enneagram says we have all three, but one of those is highlighted. And so that gives us what's called an instinctual subtype, meaning you're a type 7, but your subtype is one-to-one. And so you're a more intense 7 and more seeking one-to-one connection and personal excellence, and the expectations you put on yourself and others are maybe higher. And I'm a social subtype, so I like my intensity. I like the one-to-one friends because they're intense, and I like that. And after an hour, I'm like, okay, so we even drink. You know what I mean? All right.
Yeah, you don't want to be caught by me at a party for 3 hours.
Jeez.
You're looking over
those are
your
the people
shoulder
I have to
going,
relate to.
rescue
Right.
me.
Right. I know. Be captured by a one-to-one. I mean, it can be fun for a while. It's just,
Yeah.
So,
God, it's just so interesting. I mean, I just could talk about this forever. So once we've got our type, we know where our wing is, we lean towards a strong wing in this regard, and we've got our subtype. Talk about the different manifestations and how this plays out between men and women.
let's put it this way: all of this stuff, this psychology stuff, intersects with culture and family, and all of that forms how our type and our subtype is expressed. So it's really important to understand the kind of the environmental situation we're in, and again, the culture and so on. And
Oh, the culture would play such a huge role.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like a woman in India or somebody in France, you know, to someone in Australia, you know, different
Right.
ethnicities and so forth, and upbringings and social norms and so forth.
Right.
It's,
Yeah. You know, so we could say, like, say for women, uh, in many cultures, there's a background is changing some now, but women are supposed to be the helpers and the people who feel and take care of, and they're kind of like the twos, you know what I mean? And they're not all twos, but they kind of get pulled somewhat in that direction. Um, and you know, different. I mean, I've taught the Enneagram on 6 continents now, and there's a cultural overlay in every country.
Mm.
You know, we used to joke and say, well, you know, the Brazilian, in Brazil, they're all 7s. They're not. But you know why I'm saying that? Because the Brazilians, they
Yes.
party, they dance, they party. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
that's not the French. You know, it's not the Germans. It's not, it, anyway, so it
Yeah.
makes a big difference, you know, and in fact, the 4s, in a lot of cultures, the 4s are very difficult for people. It's like feelings are not welcomed, and you've got to kind of withdraw and hold it inside, and that's not a good, that doesn't feel very good. And then in other cultures, there's a lot more room to be expressive. Even the guys who are 4s can be more emotionally expressive. You know, I remember teaching in Mexico, and there's just more room for emotional expression. You know, they're not. I mean, of course, they called me a gringo, and meaning I'm one of those uptight northern people. You know what I mean? And it's true. I know. I get it. You know.
Yeah.
They're just more fluid emotionally. Or in Portugal, you know, the whole. I forget the name of their folk music. You know what I mean? There's a certain genre of folk music, and it's so so deep, and it's drawing upon the suffering, and yet the possibility of love, and it's a
That
mournful.
soul singing they do in Portugal, it's just riveting. There is a Portuguese singer that I absolutely love that collaborated with Morricone, and I've never heard anything like it in my life. I mean, it was truly from a cellular place. So it's extraordinary.
That's the 4 stuff. So I mean,
yeah. What's it like for you working with somebody who's done a lot of work? So, you know, they come to the Enneagram later and they've done a lot of psychotherapy, a lot of spiritual work, a lot of body work. They really know themselves. And then when you know yourself, you can tend to mask some things or sort of hold yourself back because you are more aware and you're not wanting to swim around with your shadow, so to speak. What's it like for you then to be working with somebody who's more evolved in terms of their understanding, but then the Enneagram can help magnify that?
Well, again, it's a combination of strengths and challenges. So if there are problems that show up, the Enneagram is great for that. But if you also want to develop your strengths, the Enneagram is great for that. You know what I mean? So it's good for not only personal growth and relationships, it's good for professional skills. We talk about, we take it into the workplace at times for teams and communication and leadership development. It's especially important for leaders because their personality, their blind spots or their reactivity or whatever, I mean, they've got their strengths there. They wouldn't be in a leadership position. But if you want to even expand that possibility of being a great leader, you can develop other parts of yourselves, or you can notice what might still be holding you back. Because a lot of us, we reach a plateau, even if we've done a lot of work on ourselves. There's a point at which we kind of plateau out, and again, it's up to people. It's a personal choice. But
when we talk about, all of the different types having value, we need all of them.
Right, we do.
And when we're working in a team, we need all these different types on the team. We can't just be in a group of 1s. We never know where the risks were. And, we can't just be 7s or we'd all flame out and never have any downtime and never be embarrassed and pathetic, So it is I just want to hear a little bit more about you working with teams, to understand each other and what you need as a team member. If you're leading somebody and you've got a team of people, within your team, how you can all work together and understand what each other needs and give each other what you need in order to work collaboratively in the most productive way.
Single most important for a team is the success and productivity of a team is emotional intelligence. The research has been done. It's just not my, positive idea about it. It was done 20 years ago by Daniel Goleman. He actually did the research. And he, if you're working by yourself somewhere, you don't necessarily need a lot of emotional intelligence. If you have this job and you're good at it and that's what you do. But companies, of course, have been moving towards teams because in this world, in this current environment, teams are faster and more adaptable and, anyway, there are reasons why teams are important these days. And so, but you get people together, a lot of companies, they get people together, so now we're going to have you as a team. Now you're going to operate as a team. And people don't know how to do that. They just don't understand. They haven't had enough training to know how to do that. And so the Enneagram is one of there are many approaches that help teams, but the Enneagram is also a really great one because it increases emotional intelligence. You know more, like you were saying, you know more what's going on for that other person. You don't have to react as much. You can kind of respond, like, okay, we're different, but let's talk. That's right, because we know that everybody has a contribution to make, and we want to bring that contribution forward. What does that take? We know something about our own reactive patterns. Like I get plugged in every time so-and-so does this, you know what I mean? And so I got to work with that. And, but even at a deeper level, we understand people's motivations and their deeper concerns and what their fears are. And we can be empathetic with it. We can go, well, all right, I don't have that, but I get it. I'm not a 6, but I've learned, like, oh, I get it. There's your system gets worked up around what could go wrong, and you really need a plan, and you need all those questions answered. And okay, I can get there, at least for a time, rather than saying, "What is your problem? You're nuts." Let's just move into action. Like, or I know how to get there with them, and all of a sudden we're allies. And we don't even always have to like each other all the time. But it's to be able to go. I recognize that your way is a valid way. And you have a contribution to make here, and you get upset about certain things. You know what I mean?
We build
don't want to have
community.
a lot of fighting going on, or they have to approach it slowly, and you can't just go pushing a 9 around because they'll just kind of smile and retreat and go, okay, whatever. They have their defenses, or with the 2, they need a lot of recognition and approval. 3s don't like you to slow down their success, but if you could talk about the teamwork actually will lead to bigger success, that gets their attention. And if you give the 4s recognition for their depth and their emotional depth, and kind of don't take offense over sometimes their affect is a little too emotional for what I might be comfortable with, but okay, we can work it out. And the 5s, you don't just go jumping into their space. You let them know. Can I talk to you later today or maybe tomorrow? Well, what do you want to talk? I like 20 minutes of your time, and I like, or even if you have to go knock on the door, you don't go barging in and look over their shoulder. You kind of knock on the door, literally or metaphorically, and say, give them a chance to kind of adapt to your presence, and so on.
Yeah, a 7 and a 5, try to figure out a meeting. It's like, I want to have it now, and the 5 just needs more time to come when they're ready.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a really big help for teams, and again, it's not the only system, but I'm just saying it's the best. Useful. In my opinion, it's the best system to develop emotional intelligence.
So. And I was just going to say before, we build community based on shared humanity, not shared opinions. And so it's so incredibly valuable. What about in romantic partnership?
Right.
You've obviously, Pat, your partner is also very adept with the Enneagram and teaches it. And so you've been swimming around in this world together for many, many years. How does that play out for you in a relationship? And you can speak from your own personal experience or just working with the many, many people that you have.
Well,
The
again,
benefits of knowing
yeah,
your type.
we generally have to compromise on stuff. Now, if you're with somebody of the same Enneagram type, which is not actually usual, usually we find ourselves with someone of a different Enneagram type because what they got is attractive, or the complementariness kind of fits in some wonderful way. There are people who are with the same Enneagram type, and of course the problem there is that they can kind of reinforce one another's patterns. So they have to be aware of that. But most of the time, we have to be willing to kind of negotiate. We're not going to get everything from this one imperfect human being, and we have to be able to, negotiate that. And sometimes it means letting people be who they are. Like, okay, that's who that. I mean, it's not abandoning people to their pattern. Okay, we have to reach out. Sometimes we have to invite. Sometimes we have to fight back. I mean, all that's part of it. But a lot of the time, we just have to let them be. And they're different.
It's such a beautiful notion that you speak of, letting them be. And yet it's easier said than done, particularly when letting them be may be in direct conflict to letting yourself be, or at least that's how we see it when we're not surrendering to the ability and the capacity for us to hold each other in balance, particularly when you're triggered by something.
Right. Yeah. Well, we all of us get triggered and get reactive at times. And so knowing that, managing that reactivity is a big first step. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's like, sometimes I'm sitting there like, okay, just don't say anything. Just, we say it's Band-Aid therapy. You get a Band-Aid and you put it over your mouth. And you wait half an hour until your state changes. And then you can say something with some love or some kindness. You know what I mean? Is you don't just, and sometimes relate by withdrawing. React by withdrawing. So it's not always, explicit. Sometimes they just like withdraw. And so you got to notice that when you're reacting with a withdrawal pattern, and it's not like you should never withdraw. It's about being able to manage or at least participate with these patterns. It's like, okay, can I breathe? The basic method. By the way, the Enneagram doesn't come with any method. It's a map, and it empowers whatever method you got because you can adapt, couples work or, cognitive behavioral therapy or body therapy or any of that can be tailored more to the particular individual. In relationships, in primary relationships, there's some of that we need to apply. You know what I mean? It's like, what do I need to understand here about this person? And how can I sometimes challenge, sometimes let be, but do it in some form of kindness? And know my own reactive patterns. And so the basic method is pause and take a breath. It's basic mindfulness. I would just add the breath, pay attention, notice what's going on, and take some breaths. Sometimes take some, deep breaths. And that will start to shift. And at least, if I'm angry about something, I get to pay attention. Is this something I need to say? And maybe it is, but at least after I paused and I've kind of been with my, I can say it a little bit differently. Right.
And this dance of wanting to respond rather than react. And as I've been in conversation with you and then in sessions with you, the awareness of what the core motivation is, the awareness of knowing what the shadow part of my type is and what I lead with and what I need and what happens when I don't get it or I'm afraid of it or, feeling limited and having that sort of fear around it. about not being free, it does allow you to catch yourself more quickly in consort with different modalities that you may be working with, like you said, with a system. And it does give you that map to go, oh, there it is again, to understand it better. How does that play out with parenting? You have touched on that throughout our conversation, but I imagine it's just so incredibly useful in family dynamics.
I think it is, yeah. And again, you don't need the Enneagram to do this. It's just the Enneagram it's so effective and efficient. You know what I mean? Because you get a profile of the other people in your family, and you know your own, and so you can understand why there would be wonderful ways of connection that are easy and that happen. And then there are other times when there's just this innate difference that can lead to conflict or disappointment. And so, and of course, as parents, to understand, to see our children for who they are. I mean, that's the kind of the task of parents, right? Is to love and support as best we can, but also to see that child's potential and support that potential. And so the Enneagram allows us to see kids a lot more clearly without our own. Parents, we project. I mean, we want the best for our kids, but we do tend to kind of project or, put our own expectations in there. And that's not necessarily wrong. I'm just saying to be able to kind of see who that little person is. So it's like being a teacher. It's like being a parent and allowing them to be different. The little kid who runs around with constant questioning and is anxious all the time and very thin-skinned. And it's just like, yes, that could be problematic. That could be very frustrating, and you could even get angry. But if you know how to breathe, you know what I mean, and see her for herself, and that's part of her type structure, and that you can actually support her in developing more capacity if you know what's going on. You know what I mean? You could speak to her concerns and her fears. Yes, it's a lot of work, but if you love your kids, we work on their behalf, and we don't judge them for being different. So, and there's some books out now about parenting with the Enneagram. There's even one by a colleague in Australia. Pretty darn good.
Oh, so tell us about how we determine what our type is, our subtype, our wing. Take me inside a session with you. Obviously, I've experienced it, that I didn't even have to do any preparation. I just made the hour appointment with you, and we just had a conversation, and you asked me questions, and we did it by a process of elimination was how I would describe it to somebody.
That's part of it, yeah. We knew pretty quickly what types you weren't, right?
It was very quick, was it? It was like 10 minutes, and it was like, oh, yeah, here we go.
I know. It's supposed to last longer, and most people it does. And so in the Narrative Enneagram School, I'm part of the Narrative Enneagram School, been, it's again kind of developed over 35 years, past 35 years, and we have programs and training certification for people who want to become teachers and practitioners and all that good stuff. But one of the things that we teach is how to do a typing interview. And Dr. David Daniels, the Stanford guy, who was also a psychotherapist, and he was big on this. And I think therapists can understand, it's like there's an interview. And in this structured interview, we ask questions around all 9 types around the Enneagram. Not just, do you ever? It's how important is this? How big a deal? Is that a place where you're really strong? And if you're really good with that, do you overdo it? And let's talk, and people kind of know that about themselves. And there's no guarantee we're going to have a typing interview and you're going to get your type right, because it's not my job or our job to tell people what their type is. But an interview can go a long way to narrowing it down to at least a couple of possibilities. And we say sometimes it takes time. Sometimes people have to take time. They can get it down to a couple of possibilities, and then it takes them a while. And that's okay. Because the exploration is part of the deal, and self-awareness that develops is part of the deal. And now there are tests and questionnaires that are available online, and some of them are pretty darn good. And none of them are going to get 100% accuracy. So you have to hold them a little bit lightly,
Mm.
and if you've done a lot of work on yourself, or you have a particular thing going on in a particular day, you could answer those questions differently,
Yes.
you know. So there's no, but as long as you understand that you can hold it lightly, then sometimes those questionnaires can be helpful. And there's a lot of them now because everybody wants to have a questionnaire. And I haven't been able to try them all out. So I don't know.
I prefer to go to a really great Enneagram practitioner like yourself and do the one-to-one interview. We did it on Zoom and we were face-to-face, and it was just the process of it in and of itself, as you say, was incredibly rewarding.
It's a great
And
conversation.
it really, really was a great conversation, and our subsequent conversations as well. And just knowing that you have the freedom that there is no right or wrong, that all the types have benefits and they all have the shadow, and that we need all of them, and that we can dance, in various aspects of them. But your core motivation, your dominant tendency, you do narrow it down to, I remember, when we were talking about the subtypes, I went, well, I can relate to all three of those, and well, shit, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, and then as we drilled further, it was just so very clear that the most important thing to me was the one-to-one. And it was just, I just felt it in my body. I had a somatic, visceral reaction to it. I went, that's right. In my heart, my body, my spirit, I just knew that was what it was.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that really surprised me when I was speaking to you was your work with religious groups. And I had this limiting belief that I couldn't understand, or I had a bit of a block as to how, it found its way in and was so deeply embraced in seminaries and so forth. And you touched upon that before. So do you mind sharing that again so that we can share that with everybody about how that came about?
Okay. Well, yeah. First of all, let me quote Helen Palmer, my mentor and friend for many, many years. And she said that the obstacles in her type structure, the obstacles to her knowing herself, the obstacles to having good relationships with people were the same obstacles that showed up in her spiritual practice. It's like there were obstacles, places where she was shut down or not available or defended. And of course, we need some defenses. So it's not quite so simple. It's all just open up and whatever, love everybody. I mean, there's work to be done. But she understood that when you work with those obstacles and those defenses, you become more available. And it strengthens your relationship and connections, not only with the people that you love, but also with perhaps a greater presence. And so even people who are not religious per se can have a spiritual experience in doing this deep work. And again, even without the Enneagram, people who've done deep psychological work or deep somatic work, oftentimes they'll go, oh, wow, it's like there's a greater presence or there's some spiritual whatever. I mean, again, however you define that. So, but the Enneagram's the map. And of course, in the early days, or when it began, the Enneagram was bringing a lot of traditional wisdom from, in particular, the Christian tradition. And some of the really fundamental things in Christianity kind of were precursors. Sometimes the language actually showed up in the way we were first learning the Enneagram. Because we talked about the holy ideas, the way we get stuck in our mind, but then there's this greater presence, this greater knowing. And we talked about the virtues of the heart and the passions, or now I call them the emotional habits, but basically the passions were the 7 sins plus 2. You know what I mean? There's a history there that goes way, way back. And there's even been some Christians who, some centuries ago, who were using it to talk about the dignities of God, the way God's blessings show up, and they come through kind of these 9 doorways, and they're all a little bit different. They're aspects of a greater wholeness. And so at the beginning, it has continued to this day that people in many congregations, it's been fascinating to see how it's become popularized and then it kind of went away. There's been pushback, Pope Benedict sent out a warning letter about yoga, meditation, and the Enneagram. You know what I mean? He didn't forbid it, but he was warning people. And so that kind of, and now a lot of the Protestant congregations and even the evangelical groups have become interested in the Enneagram because it works. It works for relationships. It allows us to love people better, but it also does something in terms of our connection with a higher power. And if that's okay in your religious construct or context, it can be very helpful.
Gosh, I find it incredibly helpful. What do you love the most about teaching the Enneagram and sharing this map with people?
I love to meet people who are working on themselves. And, they don't have to be advanced in the work. It opens my heart when people are saying, okay, I'm willing to take a look at myself. I'm having trouble with my kids or my spouse or the work, I'm willing to kind of take a look at, my patterns. And that just opens up a channel for me. And I just love meeting people and I've had the advantage of meeting people in so many countries around the world and making new friends. And because we understand each other. I was in Australia 5 times and I have friends there and I just like, and how would I would never be friends with them if we didn't have the Enneagram on.
Yes. And Lisa and I dream of bringing you to Australia again. So we will have to make that happen. Right. I could talk to you about this all day long. I always close every episode with the same question, and I'll ask it to you. For someone that has a dream in their heart and doesn't feel like they have what it takes to make it happen, what would you say?
I would say that you have resources and you may not know what all those resources are, but that you have inner resources and you have also potential external resources in the forms of, basic practices and new skills and also people. And that to me, there are ways, not just the Enneagram, but there are ways we know now how to look at those resources. And maybe I can't do it all from where I'm sitting, but I can look to what are the resources that could be available to me. And with those resources, whatever they are, I can, much more likely to be able to achieve what my goal is.
Oh, thank you for how you show up in the world and this beautiful work that you're doing. I can't wait to talk to you more about it.
Okay. Thank you for being so enthusiastic.
What a fantastic dive into the Enneagram. It is a map of human beings, a system for developing self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and for identifying and understanding patterns of thinking and being and feeling in ourselves and others. And this modern version of the Enneagram that's been developed over the last 50 years, Pete has played a significant role in that to help people reduce conflict and build bridges and appreciate diversity. The knowledge and the awareness that you get really does help you open your heart and practice more understanding and compassion in your intimate partnerships and friendships, family dynamics, and in parenting, in leadership and work relationships, and in group dynamics of any kind. Basically, you end up liking yourself and other people better. The understanding helps you not take things so personally so that you can respond instead of react. And so this system of personality types illustrates the 9 ways of seeing the world and forming a personality. And once we identify these character structures, we can see the patterns for how we participate in life. And as Pete said, the 9 type structures that the Enneagram describes are all found in psychological literature, scattered in different places. The Enneagram simply brought the knowledge together in an organized system. And that system helps us answer the question of how do we take care of each other? That the Enneagram describes how love is expressed from the 3 centers, the head, the heart, and the body. And that we're all based in all 3 centers, working together in a holistic system, but we lead from one. So we have a certain way that we see the world and we have patterns around our emotional experiences. And through understanding our type and our primary goals, we can gain more understanding of the patterns in our body and in our neurobiology, that we are more than our patterns, as Pete said, but the patterns themselves serve as a roadmap for understanding our behavior. so that we don't get stuck in our patterns. We can respond in a more mindful way rather than reacting. So we've got our type, and then we have our wing and our subtype. So there's a wing on either side of you in the Enneagram circle that's close to your type, but you're always dominant in one. So I'm an Enneagram 7, and I am a dominant 8 wing as opposed to a 6 wing. And I really love the way that Pete described it, that it's an invitation, a reminder that you can go there and bring in that slightly different flavor of yourself if you want to. So then you've got your subtype. So I am a 7 Enneagram with a strong 8 wing with a 1-to-1 subtype. So it's either self-preservation, social instinct, or 1-to-1. We all have all 3 of these survival instincts, these instinctual drives like animals, but one of them is more of a priority than the others. So for me, it's 1-to-1. And when we gain more understanding about these patterns of thinking and being in our bodies, we are able to see more quickly in the moment how we are automatically reacting to situations so that we can catch ourselves and respond more mindfully. And how the Enneagram helps us see our strengths and obstacles, that there is a shadow with every type, that any aspect of the type can be overdone, that our superpower can be our Achilles heel when not held in balance. And seeing how your strength can be a defense to protect yourself. I was thinking about that as he was speaking, how I use my intellect and my quick thinking and moving on to something to avoid not feeling free when I feel penned up against something or someone tells me something's not possible. And we can learn to befriend our shadow and work with it. So thinking about what do you need to get in touch with in order to get where you want to go, or in order to hold things in balance. So for Pete as an 8, he was acknowledging that it's vulnerability and fear. And for me as a 7, it's pain and limitation. And that relationship with fear and safety, that we do make fear-based decisions when we don't feel safe enough. So how can we feel safe enough to hold things in balance? And how the Enneagram can support us in intimate partnership, that knowing our type and that of our partner helps us listen better, not take things personally, resolve conflicts, communicate clearly what we need, and listen to what our partner needs. And when he was saying that it is unusual to be in an intimate partnership with someone of the same Enneagram type, that we then could reinforce each other's patterns. So we often find ourselves with someone of a different Enneagram type. So when you are triggered or you find yourself in conflict, just pause and take a breath, ask questions, be aware of nonverbal communication, and don't lead with assumptions about what the other person is thinking and feeling, and acknowledging compromise. Surrender into the fact that we're not going to get every single thing that we need every single minute that we want it from this one imperfect being, and we can negotiate that reality. And that means that we let people be who they are. We let them be different, and we can invite communication around that rather than fighting back. Particularly when we're triggered, we can build a greater capacity to hold each other and see each other, even when we're triggered. I liked his concept of Band-Aid therapy, that sometimes you just don't say anything. You wait a bit, maybe wait half an hour, maybe more, until your state changes. And then you can respond with love and kindness. And this idea that the Enneagram can help you predict the dynamics in relationships and where conflict might come up. So definitely check out Helen Palmer's books, The Enneagram, and then The Enneagram in Love and Work. And how he was describing what it can do as a parent to understand your children, and acknowledging that we don't need the Enneagram to do this, but it is an effective and efficient shortcut, that you get a profile of the people in your family, your children, your parents, depending on the situation, and how those innate differences can lead to conflict or disappointment. Well, when he said the Enneagram allows us to see kids a lot more clearly without our own parents. Because we do project, and we need to be able to allow the children to be different. And the book that he was referring to is Knowing Me, Knowing Them. Understanding Your Parenting Personality by Discovering the Enneagram. And that's written by Tracy Tressida, Margaret Loftus, and Jackie Pollock. I've been thinking about how I can use the Enneagram in a more productive way to chisel my leadership skills and be more in tune with what my team members need and how they communicate and how they're motivated, how they can feel valued, how we can work collaboratively in the most productive way. It is so interesting to me to see how the Enneagram is being used in religious communities. That was a surprise to me. And it's really fascinating to see that there is a history that goes all the way back, that some Christians were talking about the 9 doorways to greater wholeness centuries ago, and that the Enneagram was taught at seminaries and then moved into the Catholic community because of the Jesuits. And they realized they could use it to help people get along. And it makes sense why it's so big in Ireland and the Philippines, the Enneagram, and how it can help you have a deeper relationship with higher power. What Helen Palmer said about the obstacles in her type structure, the obstacles to knowing herself, the obstacles to having good relationships were the same obstacles that showed up in her spiritual practice, that there is a mirror there, that the places where she was shut down or not available or defended were the same. I'm going to keep thinking about that, but I think in my life, the same is true. But we do need defenses, as Pete was saying. But when we work with our obstacles and defenses, we become more available. It strengthens our relationship and connection with the people we love and with higher power. And acknowledging how psychology intersects with culture and family and informs how our type and subtype is expressed. Understanding and acknowledging the environmental situation and culture that we're in. How are men and women taught to express themselves differently in all cultures? What are the expectations? How much room is there for emotional expression in your world? That we all have strengths and challenges within ourselves and in our relationships and in our personal development. You have a contribution to make and you want to bring that offer forward. So what does it take for you to feel safe to express yourself so that we don't get stuck in our patterns? We can use the Enneagram to identify our type and our reactive patterns, and then use different therapies with the Enneagram so that we're functioning in all 3 of the centers. And appreciating that the Enneagram is a system that is neutral. It's neutralized to methodology and ideology. It's simply a map that empowers us and can work with any therapy that we're choosing to use, whether it's psychotherapy or somatic therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, body work. The Enneagram can just keep opening lines of inquiry and greater awareness about what drives us and our choices and what we're really afraid of. Oh, I'm thinking about the shadow part of 7, of my version of 7 with an 8 wing and a 1-to-1 subtype. What I lead with, what I need, what happens when I don't get it, what I'm afraid of. It's feeling limited and not being free and having a fear around that. And then how do I behave because of it? It's really interesting stuff to look at. And the heightened self-awareness that the Enneagram gives us allows us to catch ourselves more quickly when we notice that we are reacting in those ways. And so, as Pete says, use the resources that are available to you. You are more likely to achieve your goals and be more happy if you do. Oh, please connect with Pete and all of the incredible resources about the Enneagram. It really is a fantastic shortcut to go, oh, there it is. There it is again. And I want to understand it better. There are a lot of different levels of learning with the Enneagram, a lot of different ways that you can apply it. You can use the system to have a happier life. And so to determine what your type and subtype and dominant wing is, the best way is doing a type interview with Pete, which is what I did. You didn't have to prepare anything. You just show up on Zoom and he just asks you questions and you have a conversation and you get to what it is. And even that process in and of itself was incredibly fulfilling for me. I learned so much, and it was like a therapy session, basically. It was just incredible. You also can fill out an Enneagram questionnaire online. They're just not 100% accurate, and it's just not as fulfilling, I don't think, because I've done it many times, and this is just a whole other ball game. So definitely connect with Pete at the enneagramatwork.com. All of his links are in the show notes. There are articles about the 9 structure types, the subtypes, the defense system, relationship patterns. There's workshops and programs where you can immerse yourself and learn more about the Enneagram. I am really interested to hear what your type is and your subtype and your wing, and how learning about it has helped you in your work and in your relationships and your personal life, your parenting. I'm obsessed with this. I just think it's just such a useful tool. So please leave a review, post in the Facebook group. I'm excited to hear your story.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.